What is up, guys? Stealthy here, back with another video for you guys. Today we are on the Snapzone website and we are looked at the current meta decks, the top tier decks for trying to climb ladder. And so we're kind of going through all of these, looking at the different options. A lot of these are decks that have been in previous metas that have been pretty powerful. I was going to try and pick one for us to play today, but instead I decided, instead of going with like one of the tier 1 decks like this ramp deck that it's very similar to the one we played the other day, or something like a Sarah Control which we featured, I decided to go with one of these silent performers up here. And I decided to go on this Cerebro 3 deck right here. So I've played a little bit of Cerebro 3, not a ton. I typically don't normally put Magic or Crystal in my deck, but Shadow King and Valkyrie are both very good options. I don't have Jeff or Mobius, so we were going to be switching those out for a couple cards, but this is the basic shell that we're going to try and run with and see if we can't get some wins. So let's go ahead and hop over into Marvel Snap, where I will show you my iteration of the Cerebro 3 deck, and then we'll run up some ladder matches and see if we can't climb a little bit today. Alright guys, so here is the deck in all of its glory. As you can see, we just kind of copied it over. There's only a couple changes we made. One of those being that we didn't have Jeff, and so we decided to slot in Ravana for Jeff, and then we also added Iron Man. Ravana being one of the newer cards, reducing the cost of our cards with 1 or less power by 1. So that's why I opted for the Iron Man as well. So it'll make our Iron Man, Mystique, and Cerebro kind of our key core combo cards cheaper by 1. Iron Man is also a great hit for our Bast that's already in this deck. And so that's kind of the general gist for it. Obviously, we've got our standard like C3 kind of cards in Valkyrie, Shang-Chi, Shadow King, your kind of control pieces with 3 power. Invisible Woman is great because we can hide things like Cerebro or Mystique behind her, or we can even put a Shang-Chi behind her so that at the very end of the game he triggers, or maybe even a Valkyrie. The magic is nice to give us an extra turn, taking us to turn 7, allowing us to have an extra draw for our Cerebro or Mystique, which is also why Crystal is in here, because we really want to make sure we're drawing both of these cards. Wasp is in here because she becomes a 0-3, getting hit off of the Bast, which can be a great addition of power when she's getting the Cerebro buff, or she can just be a 0-1 that we add in at the very end of the game as well. And so that's kind of the basic gist of the deck, guys. We're going to go ahead and jump into some games and see if we can't get some wins with it. Alright, our first match, we're up against TJF P-Man. Raft is currently the hot location, so we're going to be seeing a ton of Raft. At this point, we don't really need to play down Bast. We'll probably draw into something else. In addition to our Mystique, that would be a great Bast hit, so we're just going to hold him out for a turn. Our opponent might be playing C3 as well. A different variation. Again, we're not in any kind of hurry, and we'd like to get rid of those rocks, so we're just going to pass our turn. The Ravana and the Bast, I would assume, kind of contradicts each other. So the Ravana might not discount the Mystique if she gets Basted. At this point, I think we're okay with just playing Crystal into Raft. There's a decent chance, I say a 50-50 chance that the Raft goes away anyways, so we'll just kind of play into this lane and just sort of see what happens. So sure enough, the Raft disappears. At this point, we have a great hand for Bast, so we're going to go ahead and drop Ravona, and then we'll drop Bast into another lane, because we have Mystique, Cerebro, and Wasp all going to be connected with on that Bast, which is huge for us. So it does revert their cost back to normal. At this point, I think we are okay with going an extra turn. So we will drop Magic. At this point, we're probably throwing mid since neither of those cards have 3 power. And opponent doesn't show signs of being any kind of Shuri deck, obviously. They have some discard. So it might just be beneficial for us to play out the Shadow King now just for the stats alone. So along these, they're probably going to do a bunch of discarding, which will be pretty interesting and kind of difficult for us to manage. We're going to go ahead and drop the Cerebro followed by the Mystique. This could be a turn early, but I like to leave our last turn for either a Valkyrie or a Shang-Chi. And we'll save the Wasp so we can decide where we need that extra power on our last turn. So we do see the Apocalypse come down mid. If we wanted to, we could Shang-Chi that and probably just win out mid if we were to do that. Then we don't have any other play. A Valkyrie could also do a very similar effect. Dropping into 3 power, upping both of them to 3 power, and adding quite a bit to that lane, which might actually be the better move than the Shang-Chi at this point. And then we just have to decide, do we want to put Wasp in left or right? I'm banking on a heavy discard, and so lots of discard is going to run this Morbius up. So I think the extra 7 power in the right lane will help us to win that. And so now we've switched from winning left and right to probably winning mid and right. And instead, our opponent retreated. Victory! We were very confident in winning that. I don't know why our opponent snapped. We weren't going to snap back just in case they were going to retreat, which they did anyways, so it didn't really matter for us. But yeah, so a nice 2-cube win on the first game. Let's go ahead and jump into another one. Alright, our next match is up against Dialga. Wakandan Embassy is actually really rough for us, considering we now have 2 5-powered cards, so we may not end up playing those. It depends on what we happen to draw into. If we never draw Cerebro, then we won't play them. But getting an Onslaught Citadel, we would really like to draw into the Cerebro because that could really help us win. I don't think we snap on this simply because we haven't drawn him yet and we're not sure what will come of this. We could always draw into Bast again, which would actually be really good for us, dropping both of them back down to 3 power. At this point, I think we're going to just curve out our Shadow King because we have Valkyrie and Shang-Chi as other answers. So this is where things could get really bad for us, because this could be a Forge into a Brood, which puts them at 3 cards into the Raft. We'll kind of see what happens. A Crystal. We're going to try and play for Raft. We did draw into Cerebro though, and Cerebro into Mystique on Onslaught Citadel is very big for us and could easily win us this game. We still just have to be mindful that both of these are 5 power and we can't play them.
Neighborhood Spider-Man here.
So we're okay with that. If we wanted to, we could close out the Raft now. The only benefit that we would see from that is that our opponent wouldn't get the Raft card, because odds are we probably won't be able to play it if it's bigger than 3 power. And our only options for that would be to play like Invisible Woman into a Wasp, and the Wasp would not get any sort of buff. But at this point, we would have 3 cards at 3 power. So I think we're going to go ahead and just close out the Raft. This way our opponent can't receive it. So yeah, our opponent was going to be able to close it out. They don't know that this is just a Wasp. It could be anything to them. At this point, drawing into Iron Man is really big. And we still have the Cerebro and the Mystique. So now we have to decide if we want to just play out Cerebro and the Mystique and something else next turn, or if we want to play the Iron Man and some sort of follow-up combination. So one instance of Cerebro would be +4 to each of these, so 4, 8, 12, 13, what is it, 22. We would win the right. So I think with that in mind, we're just going to drop Iron Man. And then we're hoping that we draw into another cheaper card. I think we're okay. We're going to snap back. Because we have the Cerebro that we can drop here. We're just really banking on drawing into another 3-powered card.
Wind, aid my hand.
Okay, so that does make things quite tricky, actually.
Iron Man.
So I think we have to divert our plans here. We're not going to play Cerebro. We're going to play the Magneto, which will pull multiple cards out from the right. If it pulls out the Spider-Man, we're really happy with that. We could even go, we could actually go like this. The Valkyrie would make the Iron Man 5 power. That would put 20 in that lane, and then we can go Magneto to the left, who can potentially pull out all sorts of stuff, winning us right and mid. I think this is the play that we go for, especially because our opponent has priority, so if they play something big, the Valkyrie will just flip them into 3 power. And I miscalculated here, but we will be at 8, doubling to 16. I think we got a good chance at winning this with this play.
I am Iron
So our
Man.
opponent stole our Iron Man. And they Surfer. So, very close. If it wasn't a rogue stealing our Iron Man, we would have easily have won that match. Our Valkyrie, that is a very interesting, I've never seen this happen before, but our Valkyrie set her own self down to 3 power as well. So we would have only been at 12. If this was anything other than a rogue stealing our Iron Man, we would have won the 8 cubes, because Magneto pulled plenty of stuff for us to win the right as well. So very unlucky that our opponent had the rogue, but nothing we couldn't really plan for that. It's not a typical card that's ran in Surfer decks, so, but it is what it is. We'll jump into another one, guys. Alright, for our next match, we're up against Alightan. Central Park is pretty interesting for us. It's not beneficial or harmful to us. It just kind of takes up some board space. But we could always drop a Valkyrie and get some benefit out of it. So we're not really complaining. Miniaturized Lab is pretty interesting. I think we're just going to drop the Invisible Woman, just so that we have the stats in there right now, because we won't be able to play into it until turn 6. The way our hand is looking right now, we kind of like to draw into Magic, or even draw into Crystal. That way we get an extra draw through either one of those cards, because we don't have Mystique or Cerebro, and we'd kind of like to get them both. Specifically Cerebro. We need Cerebro mainly, but we do have an Iron Man that we can always Mystique as well. So our opponent also played into the Miniaturized Lab. Dagger is very indicative of a move deck. We do draw that Mystique, and so the way our hand is looking, I think we're okay with going Ravana, because then we can go Iron Man on turn 4, we can Mystique it on 5, kind of set ourselves up for some good success. Our opponent does go ahead and move the dagger. They gain some benefit out of us having this extra squirrel. I think we still just go ahead and drop the Iron Man. We can decide next turn if playing Magic is something we want to do, because we can play it alongside the Mystique. We just have to make sure we play the Mystique first to copy the Iron Man.
I am Iron Man.
So, drawing into Crystal. I don't know that going to a turn 7 is going to be what we want, but we will copy the Iron Man and then we will go ahead and play out the Crystal, because that extra draw would be really nice. Maybe we can draw into Cerebro.
I am Iron Man.
So there's a Cerebro that we were looking to draw into. We don't have a ton of plays. I know our opponent is going to move Jeff out and probably move a Vulture or a Dagger in. So with that in mind, Shadow King is going to be probably our best play there. We're okay with keeping Cerebro hidden until the very end of the game. And then because I feel like we're going to need just a little bit of extra power here, we're going to drop the Wasp. We're only getting a +2 on the Ravana, so we're adding 3, but that's doubling 6, so we're going up to 14 on the Baxter Building location. Let's see. What are our other options here? We can play Valkyrie. We can always move something out as well. So we can move the Squirrel out if we wanted to. We've got to make a decision now. So I think we just commit with our initial idea. So sure enough, there's the dagger that we anticipated. Heimdall's moving the 2 least important cards. So our Shadow King is going to reset the dagger. We're 1 point short left, but then Cerebro is going to push it all and give us just enough power, and we actually win all 3 lanes with our initial plan.
Victory!
So that was pretty scary. It took us all the way down to the wire on trying to make that final decision. We knew that either the Vulture or the Dagger was going to move left, so it was a pretty easy read through our Shadow King. And then the Heimdall play actually benefited us, I would say, because he wasn't able to move the Vulture, and it only put 11 stats right, which allowed us to win the right lane, sending 3 more power elsewhere, and allowing us to win all 3 lanes. So, we've won 2 matches, we lost 1. Let's go ahead and jump into a 4th and final match, guys, so we can see what happens. So far the deck is working pretty good, even though we're in a negative cube win ratio. We've won 4 and we lost 8 that second match, so we're at a -4 cubes right now, but it was kind of a fluke on that second match, so we'll see what happens. Alright guys, for our 4th and final match, we're up against Ferds, who has a Cerebro player icon, so they could also be playing Cerebro 3. Going into the raft, it would be nice to play Bast on turn 1, but I also don't feel like we need to push this because we have some other cards that we'd rather hit with the Bast than the raft, and if our opponent is playing C3, then the raft is not going to be all that beneficial to them either. So seeing a Human Torch means that they're not playing C3, or probably even playing C2. So now we have to decide if we want to hold out a turn and magic the raft, which I think is going to be our best option. So we're going to drop Invisible Woman mid, and then we will magic left. Hopefully our opponent does not play 2 cards into the raft, and we can just reset that. So very good for us. They don't get to fill up the raft, and we're going to turn 7, which we like, having Iron Man and Valkyrie in hand. We're going to go ahead and drop Ravonna, and then I think I'm going to go ahead and Bast on this hand as well. So I think we're going to look to actually potentially Valkyrie this left lane. So we're going to kind of set up our cards so that the Valkyrie actually gets some benefit. We're still looking to draw our Cerebro and our Mystique. We haven't drawn either of them. Which we could have tried to hold out another turn to do that, but we're running out of time and things to play. We're going to play out our Iron Man hiding behind the Invisible Woman. So in that second match where we got rogued, we cannot get rogued. They will rogue the Invisible Woman first. Very interesting plays out of our opponent. We really need to draw into Cerebro. And it's the last card in our deck, so we're guaranteed to draw it next turn. So now I have to decide. So that's going to be our turn 7. It's going to cost us 2. There's 4. We'll have 3 more. We can play out the crystal. Or we can... let's see. I was going to say we could try and Valkyrie that. It's not going to be that beneficial to us though. At this point, if we are going to Valkyrie this lane, it's probably best for us to do it now. So I think we'll just go ahead and Valkyrie this lane. If our opponent's going to play the Heimdall and move the multiple man in, they'll have priority for doing that. So we see a Cloak and a Strange moving the Craven. That kind of sucks for us because we were going to Valkyrie that. So now we have the option to move a bunch of our cards. I don't think that we have a desire to move them. We're going to drop Cerebro right. I think we're going to go ahead and just Mystique right as well. Put the Wasp down mid and Crystal left because there's a high likelihood that they could play Heimdall and start shifting a bunch of things over. I don't know why their Human Torch and Dagger is on the left side. I feel like if we snap, they're just going to leave, so we're just going to stick it as the way it is and just try and get a second cube out of this. I would be surprised if this is not a Heimdall. Sure enough, there's the Heimdall as we read it. Everything slides over. Iron Man flips.
Iron Man.
Getting the Cerebro buffs. And yeah, insane amount of power mid. Good amount of power left. Easy to win for us. So yeah, this is a very good example of what this deck can kind of do. It's got the high consistency in that we are able to draw out our whole deck. Obviously the Olympia helped us do that, but we had Crystal that came down and we didn't even have a card to draw at that point. So we can draw through all but one of the cards in our deck, which is great, meaning that we will almost always draw into our Cerebro and our Mystique. Adding the Iron Man gives us a second Mystiqueable target, and he's just really great. The Ravonna obviously benefited us in this match because we didn't Bast our Cerebro and our Mystique, and so we got the 1 cost benefit, allowing us to play both of those alongside the Crystal and a Wasp on our final turn, and so we really spread out a ton of power without our opponent really being able to expect it. So we've got the great counters in Shang-Chi, Valkyrie, and Shadow King to remove those Shuri decks, which Shuri was one of the tier 1 decks roaming around the meta. They also help to combat the Bloodstone meta that is not a tier 1 deck at this point, but because it's Elsa Bloodstone and she's the newest card, everybody's going to be playing it, and that could be why it's not a tier 1 deck, because it has a high skill ceiling and a very high skill floor as well to try and get into that deck and master the play mechanics of it. So things like Shadow King and Valkyrie are great for negating those buffs that you would receive from playing in that Elsa Bloodstone deck. But as you can see, guys, this is a pretty solid deck. I think we still netted out a -2 cubes across the 4 games, but that's because we laid it all out on that 8 cube game, and we weren't expecting the Rogue, and the Rogue stole our Iron Man. Which is why we've got the Invisible Woman, because we can hide our Iron Man and various things. So there's all kinds of different play lines you can go with this deck, and you interact with your opponent, which is something I really enjoy doing in a card game. I feel like interacting with your opponent is the whole point of playing the card game against somebody. So decks kind of like this movement deck, where there's not a whole lot of interaction with your opponent, you're just kind of doing your own plan, isn't that enjoyable to me. Whereas decks like this, where we've got Valkyrie and Shang-Chi and various things to kind of interact with our opponent, the Crystal even, allowing us to both draw cards, and the Magic adding a turn 7 for both of us. Just some general interactions with your opponent, I think makes things a lot more enjoyable and interesting. So obviously this wasn't a tier 1 deck, it is a surprise performer, whatever that is supposed to mean. Guess it's performing well, but there's not enough data for it to be slotted into the tier yet. But I think it's a pretty great deck. We could easily climb with it. This deck could probably very easily take you to infinite. And if you've got things like Jeff, Jeff is a very good inclusion, and he was in the original version of this deck. I just don't happen to have Jeff, and I have Ravana and was hoping to add her to a deck. So her and Iron Man seem like the 2 best fits for what we're working with here. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like. Don't forget to hit that bell notification icon so that you can get notified when videos drop. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.